Meeting of the Sedona Fire District Governing Board is called to order. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice. A moment of silence for those firefighters, first responders, police officers who have passed since our last meeting.
Let's take a moment to remember the 6 firefighters and 7 police officers that passed since our last board meeting.
Thank you.
Neal,
Here,
Cooperman. Here. Springett. Absent. Christensen. Here. Waldrop.
Here.
Chief Mizoulas.
Yes, okay, so to accommodate Isaiah's busy schedule, we made sure to have him here tonight. IT's, we'll have 2 months of badge pinning, so I'm excited. 3 months actually of badge pinnings. The next 3 months we'll have a series of badge pinnings. So start off with the latest and greatest, Mr. Isaiah Moore. Isaiah's been with us since 2013. I went to paramedic school in 2016. 2017, he got on the rope rescue team and got certified. And then February this year, he's promoted to the rank of engineer. This list was established last year, and we're burning through it pretty quick. So special recognitions. Isaiah's got the unit citation a couple times over the years and Distinguished Service Award for a pretty intense rescue, and did a lot of work to make that a good outcome for the patient. I won't get into many details. And then he's here with us tonight with his family, and his father, Larry, will be pinning his badge. So come on up. Oh, him. Okay. Don't walk across the room. Let the man break. Well, this will be the one, sir. Okay. Yes, sir. And you're more than welcome to jab it into his skin. Basic. We'll just go right over here. Just Isaiah can help you out. They make it hard.
Thank you.
Right. There you go, man. You gotta bolt that on yourself.
Congratulations.
Oh, actually, we can go on this side. Yeah. Thank you.
Engineer Moore, congratulations.
Thank you.
I know that there is a lot of hard work and dedication and time, and I also hear rumors that the engineer test was a, and so I want to congratulate you on that and your accomplishments, and let you know how pleased we are that you are part of the team at the Sedona Fire District. So we hope your career here is long and lusty, and that we get to see a lot more of you. So.
Be here. I'm looking forward to the.
Madam Chair, do you want to do a quick recess so we
Yes.
can, unless of course you all want to sit through a 2-hour meeting about budget? It's entirely up to you. I would strongly suggest you escape while you can.
Yeah.
Why don't we do a 5-minute recess for picture taking? And I want to congratulate you in person. Meeting is called back to order. All right. Do we have Gabe?
Yes, you do. How are you guys doing?
Great. Glad to know you're on Zoom with us or on Teams with us.
Yes. If I could just get screen sharing permission, I've got a PowerPoint for the budget workshop.
I won't allow it. Okay, you have access now.
Okay, thank you. All right, just get the PowerPoint. All right, you guys should be seeing the screen now. Perfect. So before I get started, just kind of want to update the board. We are deep into the budget process. We've received the majority of the budget requests. There's still a few smaller ones outstanding. Once we get those in, we'll have kind of the entire budget shell built out and developed, and then we'll be working with the chiefs on going through all the requests, reviewing them, and obviously making sure that we've got something that fits within our available funding, and still making sure we've got adequate monies going to reserves and to capital. Chief, anything you want to add before I get started?
No, I did give some division heads some flexibility specific to our consumables, medical and fleet. Really taking some extra time to nail down some best estimates because they're being very vague. The vendors are being very vague, and they're just kind of parking on potential impacts of the tariffs. So we're trying to get it as close as we think it's going to be. But for one example, last year cardiac monitors were 32,000, and now they're 70,000. So just trying to bring real numbers to the table. Yeah.
For gold plated now.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's frustrating to say the least. And that's also one kind of the things too, you'll see with this budget development, you'll probably see a lot of movement in our capital plan. As Chief mentioned, what things cost, a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, when they're put into our capital plan aren't what they cost today. And so we'll be making updates there, and we may even need to kind of evaluate our funding to capital as well this year as we're developing the budget. But starting off, again, what I want to do is kind of talked about a little update on the process. Talk about some significant budget numbers right now with not all of the requests in. I've only got kind of a short list of where some of those budget projections are coming in at. The budget schedule, and then ultimately and finally kind of the board's direction and feel on where their desires are for this budget. If we're just continue on the track that we're on, will all kind of be valuable as we come into the April meeting, and then the 2 meetings we have in May before you guys tentatively adopt. So kind of diving in first to the numbers. So we did get our assessed value in. We saw an increase of 5.82%. As I mentioned to you guys last month, that's a little over 1.1 million at our current tax rate. So great place to start off. When we're developing the budget, that we're seeing positive growth in assessed value, and it's generating real revenue for us. That'll obviously, as we develop the budget, help determine our ability to where if any adjustments need to be made in the tax rate. And starting with kind of some strong numbers to begin with, I'm hoping we can again hold our tax rate flat this year like we did last year. One of the things I do want to talk about is just kind of our funding limitations as a fire district, and just kind of, I know we talked about it again a little bit last month, but just reiterate some of those, the growth and limitations we have on the tax levy. One of our big limits on our tax revenue is the fact that we can only levy $3.75 per hundred of assessed value. So the only ability to go above that 375 is through a bond. So you could have the M&O rate to the 375 cap. And then you could have a separate levy that would be a bond levy. And obviously that's got to be approved by the voters. If you guys remember a few years back, we tried as a district to pass a bond levy, and that was unsuccessful. The other big thing is how our revenue grows. Over the last couple of years, we've seen pretty significant growth in property values and inflation, just our cost of doing business. But the voters passed Prop 117 back in 2012. And basically what that said is we can only grow our tax levy by 5%. And so while we did see the 5.82, that's all related to new growth. It was why we saw over 5%. If Sedona had no new development, and it was only existing properties, the max we could see because of Prop 117 would be 5%. And then the final kind of tax levy revenue piece that we have is our FDAT, which is a Fire District Assistance Tax. I'll kind of explain that a little bit more because I know we have some new board members. So by statute, we'll take a step back. Fire District Assistance Tax is a property tax that's levied on all residents across the state of Arizona. That money is then pooled by county, and each county then distributes that money based on the levies within those fire districts within that county. There's a max though. The max you can get is $400,000 in fire district assistance tax revenue. And the only exception to that is under a merger or consolidation. You get the average of the previous 5 years of each of the individual fire districts. So some of these ones that have merged, like Timber Mesa, they see more than that $400,000 statutory max. For reference, our FY 2025 budget for FDAT was $390,000. So the only reason we're not seeing the max is just because of the available funding within the counties to be able to distribute all of that to us, or up to our max, I should say. Any questions on property tax?
No, I think we're good.
Okay. Then another big levy revenue source we have is our non-levy revenues. Our top one being our ambulance revenue. Historically, we budgeted that around 2.3 million, relatively conservative. This last year, we've been doing really well on our ambulance collections, and we may even be able to evaluate increasing that in the next year to allow, more funding and less reliance on that tax levy to fund operations. Another revenue source we have is our telecom and communication rents. So, we have towers, radio towers throughout the district, and places like, and groups like AT&T and Verizon pay us rent to put their equipment up on those towers. Another big revenue source for the district is wildland. This is one that we budget relatively conservatively on. And when I say conservatively on it, we don't allow our wildland revenue to fund any day-to-day operations within our budget. So if I have $400,000 in wildland revenue plugged into our budget, I essentially have created and budgeted $400,000 in either wildland deployment related expenses, so the wages to send people out on deployment and those associated benefits, costs of fuel, hotel, travel, things of that nature. And then if I have a surplus after that, we automatically put that to funding our reserves. Because what we don't want to have happen is have a wildland season where, for whatever reason, we're unable to deploy. And then we are stuck with not being able to fund something else within our budget because we had a revenue source in there that isn't something that we see on a regular basis or guaranteed. And then finally, we've got some miscellaneous revenues. Some of those key ones are prevention fees, our donations. Another big one that's definitely been very good to us the last couple of years is our interest earnings. Currently, year to date, we're at actually $700,000 in interest earning within our account. And really what that does is that allows us to use our money to help fund more of our capital. Questions, comments? Before I move on?
No, I think we're good.
All right. You guys are easy to me today.
Just wait. Yeah.
But we also,
So kind of as I mentioned, we're early in the process a little bit. I'm still waiting on getting some numbers back from staff, but right off the bat, we did see an increase in our PSPRS contribution rate of 3.3%, and a decrease in ASRS of about 0.27%. Unfortunately, with the majority of our, employees being suppression firefighters, that 3.3% contribution rate increase has a larger impact to our budget. And so right there, just with that alone, if we didn't do anything this year, we're starting off with already about a $300,000 impact to the budget. The
Can
other
I
big
ask a
item,
question about that?
yes.
Would you please define the acronyms?
Oh, yes, my apologies. So PSPRS is our public safety retirement system. So all of our suppression firefighters are within that pension system. And then ASRS is Arizona State Retirement System, which is the pension system for administrative personnel or non-sworn personnel. And that's their pension system that they're in. And so
Thank you.
you're welcome. My apologies. Then, as you know, right now MOU negotiations are going on, and I'll actually pause for a minute and let Chief just update the board on where that's going and if there's any news that he wants to share with that.
COLA is one of the items. There's a few others we're costing out right now. We met this morning with some updates. I'll have the requested asks affiliated with a dollar amount next month and have it drilled down for evaluation. And then the intent is to work with labor to fine tune these asks and evaluate how they integrate into program management and other factors, and then keep moving forward.
Chief, just to clarify, we have 2 bargaining units.
Correct.
And they're getting different amounts. Is there a problem with morale around the different percentages that they're getting?
I can't speak that as far as wages and core benefits go, that it's same as far, based on industry evaluations and wage studies, but specific to their asks, it really, they pull their employee group and the ask may be a no cost ask for something. And it just depends on what their employee group comes up with as to what they want to change or see modified. So at the end of the day, the dollars allocated for the different asks may be very different, but we're basing the conversations on what they have requested to change, if that makes sense. Yeah, the COLA is the same, all of that stuff would be
The
the
COLA
same.
is the same.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Corey,
That was my question. I
Okay.
thought the COLA would be the
the
same.
COLA is a universal
Right.
measure. And SSI was 2.7 last year, I think. So 2.5 to 2.7 puts us in the ballpark for numbers. So
Perfect. All right. So yeah, kind of as we looked at, we did just from a kind of have a number in the board's mind and as understanding what potential impacts could be coming. We did use the 2.5 Social Security COLA for 2025 as an estimate in there. And as you can see, that impact would be about $425,000 increase. And when I say $425,000 increase, I do want to point out that's fully loaded. So that's included all the pension costs, taxes, everything. So our health insurance renewal is about a 4% increase of about $65,000. And we always have changes when we try to keep the budget as live as we can. One of the challenges with that is things are a bit fluid, and some information we don't get towards the end of the budget process. There could be elections and things that people make that either lower or slightly increase it, but overall, we've always come pretty close to our estimates, if not under our estimates, as we've developed the budget. We have a pretty kind of sophisticated employee budgeting tool that we use. And we actually budget by month the cost of each employee individually. And so we do try to get fairly granular as best we can. But like I said, sometimes open enrollment occurs after we've already developed the budget. And so we're using last year's enrollment selections for next year's budget process. But it usually works out where, you have somebody that gets divorced. So his cost goes down, and then you get somebody who gets married, so their cost goes up, and it kind of balances out over the years. Workers' comp has been one of those expenses that has seen significant increases for us over the last couple of years. You can see we've got a 12% year-over-year growth on that number for the last 7 years. Using that, we'd anticipate seeing about $100,000 impact. However, I know Chief can also speak to this as well. But we've been told that Securus is looking at a relatively flat renewals or going to some experience. And so this should be a year that really the only increase we see in our PSPRS is just related to, our workers' compensation would be just related to our increase in wages. And so not an increase in rates on top of an increase in wages. And Chief, is there anything you want to add to that?
No, that's correct. And so the work comp pool got hit right out of the chute with a presumptive cancer legislation, and it was unfunded by the legislature. So we took a couple pretty big hits to the pool. And in addition to that, right out of us get started, we had 2 COVID fatalities. So it was a heavy impact to the pool. And so you all know we're with the Securus insurance pool for workers' compensation, and it is we're basically by fire districts, 4 fire districts. Our governing board is all fire chiefs from around the state. And we don't have investors, or we don't have nobody's profiting from the pool. It's not a private company. That we're building based on feedback from our actuarials and our insurance folks. We're building to a point where we have solvency and a good health to the pool. And one of our desired end states is to level and potentially lower rates in the coming years. And in addition to that, we'll kind of have a menu, if you will, where there'll be a baseline request of what fire districts provide for the health of their members to maintain the lower rate. And if you don't meet certain criteria, then your rates will go up. And some examples are cancer screening, annual physicals, couple sets of turnouts, proper workout facilities. And based on our conversations so far, the good news for Sedona Fire is what I anticipate to be the benchmark we already have exceeded for many years as far as what we do to take care of our employees. So we won't recognize a huge increase. What I have discovered is I knew we do a pretty good job. I didn't realize how good a job we do till I started learning about other fire districts. And some of them have a physical on hire, and they don't ever they don't touch a doctor again until they get sick, and they don't have an annual physical. Their gym is equipment that was donated from the fitness center that went out of business and from the 90s. And they just really don't have wellness. They don't have a lot of things that a lot of larger districts are doing. So all that being said, I anticipate I think these numbers are pretty accurate, if not maybe hopefully a little high.
And one thing I will point out is as we get further along in the budget process, we will have an actual quote from Securus that will go into the budget before final adoption. So while we're discussing estimates right now, I do want to make sure the new board members do understand that when we get to final, actually even tentative adoption, we're no longer discussing estimates, we're discussing actual numbers, but we do try to start putting some things in there as a starting point. So we don't, get through the budget as we're making decisions on supplemental budget requests with, a zero-based budget. We've actually got an estimate on what kind of on a worst case scenario we anticipate some of these fixed costs could increase to. And then finally, the last piece that I want to discuss is kind of on the numbers or the operational requests, and that is essentially the program managers, division managers, budget requests. Right now, like I mentioned before, we've received most of them with minus a couple, probably only about 4 left, I believe now, 3 or 4 left. And right now we're coming in with an increase of about 350,000. And so that's, chiefs have already kind of taken their first review of those. From a process standpoint, we load that into the shell, and on our next meeting, we sit down and we do a line by line review of each budget request, and not only look at it from the request as itself, but we do a little bit of analysis on historical trending on that expense category, as well as evaluate growth on that expense from looking at it from what's called a compound annual growth rate. So we look over a 5-year period to see how much has that expenditure category grown over those 5 years. And so when we look at a request, we're able to kind of guide what makes sense from an analytical standpoint, as well as with the chiefs on what makes sense from a operational readiness standpoint. And so all of those factors are looked at as we refine the budget request down before you guys see that line item budget, which you will have at the April meeting.
So Gabe, can you
Yes.
example of a couple of examples of what an operational expense would be that they would be submitting?
So that would be everything other than our personnel costs. So fuel for apparatus, maintenance on apparatus, EMS supplies. If we're looking at doing one of the things is hose testing, anything else any other expenditure we have that's not people.
Okay,
Does that help?
thank you. Yep.
And that's the number I alluded to earlier that we're struggling with because of just getting accurate costs of things.
And one thing I'll point out to the board is, one of the things we did, Chief Coyle, that was probably, it was right after, it was probably 2 chiefs ago, when we sat down and worked on the budget, and we found people were building a lot of contingency in their budget requests. So we tried to, and we've done really well over the last couple of years on getting program managers and chiefs to request what they believe they need and allow us to handle that contingency piece. And what we've actually seen by doing that is our fund balance has grown greatly over the last couple of years, and our budget requests have actually been narrowed down over that same period of time when we do find that out. And so we'll build some in because we do know there's going to be higher costs going into next year with the tariffs and the kind of the uncertainty within the economy. But really the other big piece is we're not going to go back to the taxpayers and levy for more contingency. That's where our healthy fund balance comes in and allows us to manage that contingency throughout the year.
And a lot of that was anchored into organizational philosophy. Previous administrations, you had wrong term, but you had to fluff your individual budget because the contingency and the reserves and the thoughtful financial planning on the bigger scale wasn't there. Mm-hmm. So you would get so close to hitting your budget cap that you would put that stuff in there to protect your interests, and having this philosophy where the contingency is it's a more of an open dialogue, and it's an organizational philosophy versus a mind philosophy. And I think it's been beneficial. To Gabe's point, we've seen all the accounts that support that grow. So if we come up on an emergency, or an unexpected cost increase, we're able to absorb it.
Gabe,
Yeah,
go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say, I may be jumping ahead, but given the significant budget numbers you have, you've shown us, have you done a first pass at what the budget looks like?
We've
Or
not
to
entirely
the bottom
because,
line?
yeah, we've not, and the reason we haven't is because we don't have kind of what the labor MOU negotiation piece is going to look like.
Okay,
I can tell you right now, with this and an additional person at Station 3 to bring all our engines to 3-person engines is 1.69 million.
okay.
And then roll in then we'll fine tune those numbers, and then get a couple more budgets in, fine tune it further, and then get some numbers to labor's asks. But
Yeah, I'm just trying to estimate what the impact.
absolutely, no. No, so the way my brain operates is right now, current mill rate, we've got 1.18 million to work with. So as stated, without any additional stuff, we're 3 to 400,000 over that at that. So that right now we're looking at a rate increase.
Hey, Gabe, so as we go through there, there's a point where we keep adding things as we get numbers in, and then we get to what's kind of that likely high water mark, and then we can start refining that number smaller. When is that high water mark for the board, so they know when they anticipate that?
April.
Yeah, that'll be April.
And so far, we haven't mentioned Station 4 and whether we, have a loan that will then be paying off. Is that, and also telecom continued?
So the telecom, and Gabe jump in, but the telecom has been fairly accurately forecasted in capital for the next few years, as has Station 4.
Mm-hmm.
And Gabe, use your magic finance words to make me sound smarter.
Yeah, so we've definitely forecasted all of the telecom needs, and that has been accurately projected within our capital plan. When it comes to Station 4, we have forecasted the debt service within our M&O budgeting planning. Again, depending on where final numbers come out, we'll determine how we best finance that package, whether we use more cash, less cash. Also depends on interest rates. I'm still hearing that for government financing, we're still seeing around 4%, 4.5% financing. So still very favorable interest rates, to where I think we'll be really in line with what our forecasting, our projections have looked at over the last couple of years.
And right now, to further answer the question, this current budget includes next year and the coming years 730,000 for loan payments right now. So, but to Gabe's point, we also have some reserves set aside for the station. So once we, it'll probably be July, August timeframe when we start getting some real numbers to the station. Then the board, you'll know you have 730 to work with to if we get a loan started, but then that's when you'll decide, we want to put 2 million down or whatever that looks like. So it won't be a surprise. And right now it's costed out. We've prepared for it.
That's fantastic. Thank you.
You're welcome. So
Anything else?
yeah, just a couple highlight things. I always love to throw this slide in there. Ultimately, whenever, we just talk kind of goals, like everything we do, whether it's operationally, administratively, financially, in our personal lives, there's always a goal or an objective, and then we work towards that. One of our biggest things is obviously developing a balanced budget that meets the needs of the community. Within that, we're always looking at, our expenditures. Unfortunately, all we're seeing over these last couple of years are increases. I don't think we've developed many budgets over the last 4 years that somebody's like, oh, that cost is going down. So we've got to always continue to manage that, but also ensuring that we maintain our capital funding. We've funded our end leave liability, and we maintain our healthy reserves. And so finally, just kind of where we're at on the schedule. We're at this March 18th budget workshop. Actually, I apologize. This one doesn't have our extra meeting in there. The April 15th meeting, we'll have another more detailed look at the budget. At that point, you'll have the entire budget with all the line items to see where everything's at. Things will still be being refined. But as Chief Coyle kind of mentioned, that's where you're going to see the highest number that what could possibly come forward. As we continue to refine, we'll have that workshop with the board in May before the 20th, where we actually do that. All we're focused on is a line-by-line dive into the budget. Then at the May board meeting, we'll do another workshop. We'll ask for tentative adoption, and then at the June meeting, is where we'll have the public hearing on budget and ask for final adoption. So with that, I'll turn it over to the board.
Any questions for Gabe? I think that brings our budget workshop to a close. And Gabe, thank you for that. We'll be back to you in just a couple minutes.
All right, thank you.
This is like the team.
He
Thank
did
you.
not file a proper form.
All right. So we have the consent agenda. And I would like to, first of all, is there any discussion or questions about the consent agenda?
All good.
Everything good? Okay, then I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda covering the February 18th, 2025 regular and executive session meeting minutes. Do I have such a motion?
I'd like to make a motion to approve the agenda items as just now stated.
Great. Second. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Great. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? We have approval of the consent agenda. Mr. Boulger, would you like to do the financial report?
Unless you guys want to do it, I can do it for you.
Thank you.
All right. Well, again, good afternoon. You have the February financials in the packet. Starting off, tax levy revenue. We brought in $345,311 in total tax levy revenue. That's about $7,000 under where we projected to be for the month. Non-levy revenue was at $480,268, or over budget by $212,000. A couple things driving that. One, we received $150,000 for wildland deployment revenue. As well as kind of I mentioned in the budget meeting, our interest income still continues to be extremely strong. And so that was actually $60,000 over budget. And so between those two, those are the two big shares of our growth in non-levy revenue. CRR, or Community Risk Reduction revenue, is actually really strong as well this month. And that was over budget by $23,000. On to expenses. Personnel was at $1,363,000. That was just slightly over budget by about $4,900. Wildland deployment wages being the predominant driver of that small variance there. Buildings and land at $26,697, or under budget by $11,000. Vehicles and equipment was at $24,750, or under budget by $41,000. Communication and IT was at $66,102, or under budget by $23,000. And managerial was at $44,000, or under budget by $50,000. Next slide. Well, that one's really messed up there. Hold on one second. Let me switch to my PowerPoint here so it's a little cleaner.
Something happened on those slides he sent me, Gabe. They were not formatted right or something.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to see. It's okay. I could share, should be able to share my screen back here again and show the board. Leave the screen. Okay. Okay. How do those numbers look? Are you guys seeing my screen now?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So yeah, I'm not sure how that formatting got messed up, but so on revenue year to date, so we're 8 months through the fiscal year. We're at $18,345,000 in total revenue. That is over budget by $1.1 million. We're still kind of lagging behind a little bit on property tax. We're about $200,000 under where we projected to be at this point. But on 14 million, it's very small variances from a percentage standpoint. And again, we don't usually see our second half taxes till March, April time. And that's when I anticipate us catching up and covering that variance. Non-levy revenue, though, is really strong. As I mentioned, we're at 1.3 million over budget. Ambulance revenue, wildland revenue, and interest income are those drivers of that positive variance. On our expenses, we're at 14,465,434. That is under budget by $540,000. And as you can see, we're realizing budgetary savings across all of our categories. And this is also kind of a good point where I make where one of the things we'll definitely be doing, especially with a lot of the planning for next year with the station, bringing on another firefighter, as well as, I'm sorry?
If approved.
If approved, yes, is really looking at why are we seeing such significant savings in some of these categories, and maybe helping kind of our program managers refine the request some more.
You mean to say it isn't because we have someone who's good doing our budget?
Yes, it's a team. It's definitely a team approach on all of this.
And we do have somebody good doing our budget because Gabe's given us a lot of advice. We'll bring in estimated fuel costs, and then he has the capacity to aggregate what he's seeing across the state with the 35 plus other districts he manages. So he's like, hey, listen, this is where it's trending, and it's been good, and I'd rather explain to you why we over budgeted for fuel than ask you for more money for fuel.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Chief. Appreciate it. So moving on, as far as percentage of expenses, we've expended 63% with 37% remaining. From a reference standpoint, 8 months out of the year would be 67%. So that's that savings or that budget variance that we talked about being under. Where our money's gone, Personnel are our highest expense at 85% of our total expenditures. Operations is at 7%, and both managerial and communication are at 6%. And then finally, year over year, we ended the month with 21.7 million total cash on hand. It's an increase over the 18.1 million from last year. And then as far as other assets, slight decrease in other assets from 25.3 to 24.1. That's more just a function of our annual depreciation. And then total liabilities increased slightly from 32.9 to 33. And the big driver of that is our pension liability from our year-end audit adjustments. With that, I'll be happy to answer any questions the board may have.
Do you have any questions?
That was a very positive report.
Thank you.
So with that, I would entertain a motion to approve the February 2025 financial report. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a seconder?
Sorry, I'm having trouble hearing you. Could you repeat that?
Sorry.
I'll second.
Great. Okay. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? We have approved the February 2025 financial report. Chief Mizoulas, over to you for the monthly staff report.
Chico.
I can go first. So the significant events, I was just talking to Jeff about Wausau before he left at the Battalion Chief Wausau, and it is basically like the weather's nice. That's the significant event because the timing right now is where people want to go outside. People are out of school over the beginning last week and for the next 2 weeks between basically K through 12 and then college spring breaks. And now the weather is such that it makes sense to come to Sedona, and the call volume has reflected that, and so has the types of calls that have been experienced. And there's also some new mountain bike trails that some of which have a high level of difficulty, and those calls have already generated some business, if you will, for us. So we won't talk about who may or may not be responsible for that in the Sedona Fire District, but
We will not disclose the inventor of said trails.
yep,
His name will not be spoken.
yes.
Someone we know, huh?
Yeah.
Someone you know. Yep. And then, so that the emerging issue, the wildland and the, I don't know what to say about it, but the federal service challenges that have been faced, is certainly still in the forefront. Seems like that a lot of it is being worked through. I know that's super vague, but what I mean by that is the initial,
Shock and awe.
the initial reaction to broad statements that were made about staffing and about agreements and things like that is starting to get more individualized towards different programs. And so far, I would say that as we come into wildland fire season, there's more clarity when it comes to what in the federal government they call primary fire positions. So positions that are responding to wildland fires, the hot shot crews, that kind of stuff. But the non-primary fire positions that we need to support are still facing a lot of uncertainty. And that's going to be the one that we're watching most closely because, just like we're talking about finance and what Gabe does and everything else, it takes a lot of different resources that in the military they call the tooth to tail ratio, right? If you're gonna field 100 soldiers, that's the teeth, and the tail is everything that it takes to support that. Those tail members that aren't in primary fire positions, their availability things is questionable.
So are we talking people like dispatchers or are we talking somebody else?
No, we're talking about like finance and people that. It's interesting because the certification system is such that you can be in just about any position on a wildland fire, that even if you don't hold a position that's related to that in your day job, you just have to go through you have to be trained up in those different positions. So if you're like a communication specialist is one of the positions that we always have a hard time finding. So if you were in a primary fire position and you are a communications unit leader is the actual title, then it would be easier probably to get you than it would be if you were in a IT position as your day job, because it's not a primary fire position. So that part is, well, I'm talking about in that world. And the number of incident management teams last year was 48. The beginning of this year is 44. And now they're thinking it's 38-ish maybe. So
What does that do to?
So there's a point in the year, almost all busy years where we have to triage incidents on when we get incident management teams, like which ones get the teams that help with the coordination of all the resources and everything else. And, you know, I would hope add to the efficiency and the effectiveness of those resources that are being deployed. We're going to reach that point sooner. And what it also means is Chief Mazulis and I and Chief Miranda were at the preparedness meeting yesterday for the Coquina National Forest. I think what it also may mean is that because we're the first ones to experience fire season, the Southwest is, that a lot of the things that the unintended consequences that need to be addressed, we're going to live them first before they're addressed. So it's going to require some adaptability. And I think mainly what that means to me is that we have to make sure that we're matching our actions with our capabilities, and that we don't think that, well, hey, we've always been able to do X, Y, Z. We've always been able to ramp up this quick. We've deployed this many resources this quickly. And so we try to do that. And then we leave gaps in either the information we're providing or the level of safety that we provide, or the communications that we provide that lead to a consequence that could be a fatal consequence. Bless you.
And I want to, so these incident management teams, they're not a standing body of employed individuals that are ready to go out. They're made up of state, federal, and local resources. It'll be fire district people. It'll be game and fish. It'll be the Park Service. It'll be the U.S. Forest Service. It could be a multitude of different federal and local and state agencies. So to further complicate it, dependent upon what's happening to said agency financially, they may not be able to support their staff to be a part of these management teams. And so while the number of teams has decreased, I don't feel we've hit bottom yet.
I don't think we have either, because there's as was, I think it was Secretary Rumsfeld's time, the unknown unknowns and the knowable knowns and all that kind of stuff. There's a bunch of things that we're just making assumptions about, and we have no way to validate the assumptions because we don't have an experience base to look at and say, okay, this is how this happened before.
So if, say, team one, for lack of a better term, just team one is this incident management team, and their team biologist works for Game and Fish. Well, Game and Fish reduces or terminates biologists, then there's nobody there to vet the endangered species on the fire before Chief Coyle comes up with an incident action plan to attack the fire. So then that potentiates the risk to endangered species. And then if the representative from the EPA that comes in and does the environmental analysis, that's shuttered, and then nobody's checking to see if we're putting, retardant into a protected creek, and it on and on and on. And so it's a complex and interesting time, to say the least. So
It's mind-boggling.
it is, because there's no one size fits all, right? Just like we have incident meteorologists that come with we're National Weather Service, which is Department of Commerce, right? And then we have Department of Interior, Department of Ag. There's all these different agencies that all have new secretaries that have brand new, some of them haven't been confirmed yet or just newly minted into the job. And so everybody's getting up to speed. I will say that for the IFT Wildland Fire Policy Committee, what they went at DC 2 weeks ago is it became clear that we haven't done a good job, and I say we because of explaining to the Hill what the different parts of wildland fire response are. It's like there's this notion that it's just like, the hotshot crews go out there and do that, the helicopters fly that. And I think there's lessons to be learned from the military about explaining when if you're going to surge troops, what it takes to surge that many troops. The same kind of thing. And going forward, we need to do a better job about that.
Along those lines, Chief Coyle, during the slide fire, I got to visit the incident command center. There's cooks there.
Yeah.
There's a whole department that procures all the needed equipment. Those are not full-time employees, are they?
You know, like the national cater units are contract units, and each one of those takes to Chief Lewis's point, takes a contracting officer to write and approve their contract. And depending on how many contracting officers there are and how many from the different agencies has to do certain things, it may or may not. And then there's certain bureaus within the Department of Interior that have provided a type of asset that nobody else does. Like the Bureau of Indian Affairs provides camp crews and a lot more of the type 2 of the crews that are put together for the incident hand crews than any of the other agencies. And they're dealing with their own set of struggles right now. So you could, it's like building a house when you're working with lumber and you need a 2x4 and you have a 4x4, you can cut it in half. When we're plumbing and you need a 90-degree thing and all you have is a coupling, you can't, you need a 90-degree thing, right? And so we're just kind of finding that out as we go and then trying to figure out ways to adapt. So it's going to be clunky. That's the part that I say is make me nervous. Chief Missoula spoke to promotions, staffing. We have a review of IT job descriptions ongoing right now. We have a review of the administrative clerk job descriptions ongoing right now. And once we get those two done, we will begin the HR. We will fly the HR clerk job position again because Kyoto put that one on hold so she could focus her efforts on getting those other two across the finish line. We have new firefighters coming on board. And I would say, of course, human resources, significant issues are just doing all those things right at the same time, is getting as many people, new people onboarded, people promoted, and all make sure everything's right and then moving up through there. Another thing that's human resource-esque, I think, is that we're beginning tomorrow. By tomorrow and the day after, we'll have the majority of them done, but Chief Baker and myself will be providing one-on-one debriefs to each one of the participants in the Captain's Assessment Center, talking about their strengths and then the areas for improvement, and then inviting their feedback on the process, and then how they can take that information and use it to better themselves in their career, in their position, whether they have been made right now or they are, will be made in the future. Telecommunications, I think we have a couple of contracts and agreements and outstanding issues that by the next board meeting, I'll be able to report are finalized. And then Josh is going to talk about what his awesome thing is that he's got to do later on. And regarding other major projects, I think that is covered.
Stacks of them, yeah.
Yeah, that covered the big ones right now. So lots going on. All of it super cool and sexy, and just keep doing it. So
Great.
thank you.
All right, I'm not gonna pretend to be Kirk, and
You get to pretend to be a lot of people, right?
yeah, Kirk. So Kirk is furthering his education at the Arizona Wildfire Academy. It's an annual event that's hosted over spring break at Embry-Riddle because they get the campus, and so he's doing some wildland classes for wildland investigation and things like that. But they're busy. Their division is they're getting a lot more Firewise requests, and they're super thankful that I'm going to all these community groups and talking about Firewise because it's really helping them out a lot. We're continuing to evaluate what right looks like in community risk reduction with the departure of our fire marshal. We're continuing conversations and evaluating budgets with surrounding agencies for opportunities to share services and reduce costs. The meetings have been going well. We're going to leverage some software because there's two pieces to workload, right? There's having bodies in seats, and then there's process flow. And it's a whole nother meeting for me to try to explain to you the process it takes Carla to get plans from the city and 2 counties and then mint them and then ship them to the right person for review and then collect it's an 8-step process for something that should be a button click. And so we're looking at a relatively low cost software that'll change that process. And while it doesn't add personnel, it increases efficiencies. So she has 6 less steps to get her process moving. And then we just approved another software that the costs are embedded in the plans review fees. So that's not a cost of the district, but it improves process flow. So we're doing that, and we're looking at opportunities and really our gaps. The biggest thing right now that they've expressed as being a gap for them is the plans review piece. And so as we did a couple years ago, we brought in John Davis, our retired fire marshal, and he reviews plans for a very affordable rate. I think it's about $1,800 a month for him to knock out dozens and dozens and dozens of plans. So the division's staying on track, and as stated, we don't know what we don't know. The community has really increased their engagement as it relates to wildfire and wildfire response. And so coming up with some strategies, talked to the Department of Forestry and Fire Management after their promise to the Sedona Women's Group that they'll come down here and do Firewise assessments of the neighborhoods. I spoke with the guy that was Mike Martin that was in the meeting the other day. I spoke with his boss yesterday and let him know that I hope he has a budget to provide one of his employees to the Sedona region for 60% of their time for the next few months, because they opened the door, so we'll let them in. But I have asked that we have a good relationship with DFFM, and I don't want an environment where they come in and blast through neighborhoods and do these assessments and we're not aware of it, because I don't want to double work. And with the community wildfire protection plan stuff and some other opportunities, and maybe the state legislature opening up more dollars for wildland fire response, there no promises, but there might be a potential for us to leverage some of the resources that DFFM has to further improve what we can do for wildfire response and preparation in the community. So that's kind of a preventative strategy that kind of pours into my cup a little bit too. So and in wildfire preparedness, as we have advertised and will continue to advertise, we have 2 cleanup days, and this is for residents. We're pretty, we don't take cactus and a lot of the other stuff, and then we're really diligent about getting an address and ID so that we're not a freebie for the contractors. That has been an issue in the past, but I'm hoping this year will be really successful. With it being late April and early May, we got a couple more months of public education and getting it out there that maybe people will take the initiative and clean up their yards. So excited for that. Next slide, if there aren't any questions.
Can I
Yes.
have a question for you? Actually, it was on the one before, but over the past few months, there's been various references to a consistent rate plan.
Yes.
And I just wondered where we are on that and just rates in general.
So the Dunn Fire Chief issued a directive, not completely understanding the complexity of the process. And so with common fee schedule, ideally you have common code alignment. And I didn't fully recognize to what level that the community risk reduction divisions around the state coordinate with each other. So for one example, the International Building Code, the intent statewide is with State Fire Marshal and different municipalities is to work to adopt that code in January of next year. Mm-hmm. And I had this vision of May for us, and they explained to me that I wasn't smart. And then the WUI code, I was like, oh, it's this one. We'll go to the new one. Well, Sedona Fire has done a great job of fine tuning the current code to Sedona with a lot of addendums. And so the new code addresses a lot of those addendums from the old code that we put in place. So they're null and void. So we want to deconflict a lot of these mandates before we adopt a new code, which will then, it all relates to fees, because the new wildland urban interface code, if you imagine around the fire district, there's essentially a band that is considered WUI for the code, where there's more stringent building codes and all that. Well, with the new code, that band grows into town a lot more. And so just deconflicting some of those things and then working with the city to make sure that because there are some conflicts between the WUI code and city building code. And so if we're gonna do a collective effort and then have a fee schedule that all ties together. But they're getting to a point where they have a pretty good idea of what, and then we've discovered that, going both ways, Copper Canyon and Verde Valley and Sedona don't always charge fees for all of the same things. So there was some alignment pieces there. And so, yeah, I didn't know what I didn't know.
Thank you.
And then this is the class that is on Thursday. And
That class is full.
yeah,
Yeah.
I was gonna go to it and it filled before
I know. I
a
tried
few
to get
days
to it.
afterwards. So they're working to host a couple more to be determined. And this one is really pushed. We were asked by I'll get the name wrong, but it's basically the group that represents the realtors in Sedona if there was something. And then so Kirk put this together with Brian, and then we'll determine success and we'll offer more. But it's just a quick one day and it gives people a really good comprehensive understanding. So I think it'll be good.
Sign of the level of interest, to have it fill up that fast.
Oh yeah, it's great. All right, Buzz is on vacation. He's playing catch up with a project that didn't get done and spent the weekend at a youth retreat in Flagstaff with the Arizona Burn Foundation as a mentor / adult. And the latter part of that's to be determined. Fleet, we've got one of the 2 Type 1 engines in service. The manufacturer was able to get up here and after a couple months delay and get the repairs made that they hadn't made at the factory or at the dealership.
And they're covering the cost.
Yes.
Great.
Yes. Yes, it was, and it's difficult because one of the mechanisms that broke, I can't just say, Mike, just go order it because it's proprietary. So it has to come from the factory. So it's up to them. And so, our Type 6 engine is here and 95% built out, 100% built out, but, we're going to take the time to do some training videos and distribute it to the crews so that obviously they know how to operate the thing. So it'll be in service for the season. GIS Spinelli's he's all over the place doing a lot of good stuff. And then kind of relates to some stuff in Cottonwood. We've got some softwares that we're demoing for our fire response, and he's responsible for punching some holes in that and or being a champion of it. So we're working through that. The software game is big in this industry, and everybody's got a bright idea. And it's vendor season, as I call it. Some people call it budget season, but I call it vendor season, and everybody wants, huh?
They've even gotten to me and I just choose to ignore them.
And for example, we have a product that comes standard in the new fire trucks. It's called Haas Alert, and it's just OEM equipment in these new fire trucks. And what it does as a subscriber is they're on a couple platforms, Waves and Apple Maps, and with Chrysler. And if the fire truck has its lights and sirens activated and you're going down 89A, all the vehicles within a half mile in front of the truck, a half mile or so, their screen populates emergency vehicle approaching. And while it adds value, it's radio or Wi-Fi based, so it doesn't efficiently work throughout the entirety of our district. And then second to that, the system really was born out of preventing cross intersection accidents. And the way Sedona is geographically, we don't have situations where we have 2 stations responding from it to intersections. They're coming east or west on 89A, north or south on. So while we have the equipment in our new engines, we're not going to rush to install it on the rest because there's a substantial cost, and we're just not there yet with the technology. I think it's a cart before the horse thing, and that's one example of some of the things we're evaluating. But that all ties to GIS and everything else. And then IT, I'm not going to steal Josh's thunder. Mental health and peer support. I'm really excited about this. We had our spouse retreat this weekend, and my wife was able to attend. And I thought it would be a good deal, but based on my conversation with my wife, it was a better than I thought deal. And while the weather impacted some of our expected attendance, we did have a good showing of seasoned wives, if you will, that have been slugging through the fire service with us for a couple decades, and then some of our folks that are 2-3 years on the job. And Chief Johnson and I did a piece where they could ask us questions, and I was ill prepared for the level of intensity of the questions that were going to be asked. And so what it showed me is that we have some work to do with explaining our benefits beyond the employee, because they take the packet home and it goes in a drawer. And
Do we have work to do, or does somebody else
Yeah.
have work to do?
but so we're opening up open enrollment to the spouses, providing a Teams link so they don't have to be here in person. Some really impactful leads and statements from some of the spouses, and it's kind of one of those things I thought was out there, but it proved that it was out there, and we're doing things to get rid of some of the stigma. So I was really happy with how it went this weekend. So other than that, we're continuing to build our peer support team and bringing on more Sedona PD, and then bringing on more folks from Copper Canyon and Verde Valley, because we're so small. If we had a tragic incident, like, our folks wouldn't be good peer supporters to our folks if it was a major incident. So we're building that network, and so it's going really well.
Chief,
Yes.
the wives event, was that a funded event, or did we just think it up and do it, or?
So it was actually the Chief Johnson tried it last year with just Verde Valley, and it had some success. And so he reached out and said, hey, we're hoping to make it a little better and open it up Verde Valley wide. And so the Friday night, we have 2 insurance carriers, and they split into different rooms and then did a deep dive of the benefits to each group. And then the next day was all a mental health class. And the Start Moving On Counseling provided the food for the second day, and then the healthcare agencies provided the food for the first night. And so I think, and if I'm not mistaken, the fairgrounds, we did it at the Verde Valley Fairgrounds. I'm not mistaken, she donated the space. So it was,
That's awesome.
yeah, it was
That's great.
very minimal cost. And then EMS, Buzz been focused on numbers and just really wrapping our head around some of the data. The complexity again of our calls continues to increase. And like Jeff, Battalion Chief Wassel, on Sunday, we had 2 helicopters in the air landing complete opposite sides of town from each other to handle very injured people. And so just the complexity is maintaining its level, and then the frequency is increasing. So our folks are doing a great job of managing these complex incidents. And then
Chief, are they mainly due to our trails? I mean, are people out on the trails? Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
In terms of the complexity?
oh, yes.
Okay.
And it's multiple factors. New, more complex mountain bike trails to just, we had an incident where we're waiting for a follow-up. We don't know if it was the medical condition led to the trauma or the trauma led to the outcome, but crews are doing a great job. And then the other thing with EMS, Buzz is surgically working with Northern Arizona Healthcare. And what I mean is, they're specific to our interfacility transports to Phoenix. We're evaluating opportunities to better define when and how we get there, to hopefully, reduce risk to crews being on the freeway at 2 a.m. in Phoenix with wrong way drivers and all that. Understanding the need that some people just have to go right now to a Phoenix hospital. And so NAH has been really good about meeting with Buzz and working on some different structures on how we manage our interfacility transports. And we found that there were some gaps in their understanding of how the process works. And then trying to build a framework to improve our customer service, while also being mindful of the fact that there's 7 bills at the state right now that could blow up how we do our customer service. So, but reason I bring that up is it's at every level of NAH, they've been open and really awesome about seeking to understand our side of the story versus, you know, being prescriptive to us and telling us this is, thou shalt do this. They've been really collaborative. So but it's not a 2 meeting solution. And so Buzz has been really engaged in that. So.
Any update on what is happening at the state level on that?
No, there's a high level of confidence. One of them are going to be successful. We just don't know of all the bad ones, which bad one will be successful. The collective lobbyists for PFFA and Arizona Fire Chiefs and Arizona Fire Districts have been spending a lot of time with the bill sponsors to seek to understand why, you know, and did you know this? And what's really rising to the surface is this: most of these bills were initiated because of problems in Maricopa and Pinal County at these more complex, busy hospital systems. And the issues they have don't exist really in our rural settings, but the outcomes of some of these bills would be detrimental to our rural settings. So that's the education piece they're trying to do right now. Because you get a senator or a representative from Gilbert, Arizona, and works at a big hospital system and just doesn't understand that Sedona Emergency Center, you know, what it is and how it works. And so we'll see what happens. There's no movement, but the session is getting closer to a close. So hopefully we'll see some stuff start to get killed soon and get closer to center. But
Just because one may pass, it doesn't mean our governor will sign it, correct?
correct.
Yeah.
And then the other concern I have is DHS, Department of Health Services, is a headless snake right now. And their director resigned, and a lot of her staff went with her, and so there's nobody to champion their cause. And so it's kind of like sit back and hope they don't hit me again type of moment right now. And so it's frustrating, to say the least. And so we'll see how that manifests. But a couple more weeks, we'll have a better picture.
Thank you.
And then Jordan is in Texas assisting his son with a medical opportunity. Everything's doing great, but he wanted to be there, and I thought that was a great idea. But as stated, Captain's Assessment Center, I think I counted 1,272 measurable points of the test. 7 different stations. Each station had 3 evaluators, and then each candidate went through all 7 stations. And all accounts were it was horrible. So we did it right. And then we had our newer and existing extrication instructors complete their class. Jordan's really drummed up a regional training approach, and we've already seen the fruits of that labor. Had one hiccup with some recruits getting tear gassed inadvertently, but we come up with a fix for that. Did you hear about that? Yeah. So the Cottonwood Police Department used our fire facility for breaching and entering, and then the high school class went in there to do some fire training, and once they put water on the walls and atomized the remaining tear gas, yeah, they got a surprise. And so Jordan jumped on it right away and said, "Hey, we need a better plan, a decon plan." And
Exposed to CS gas is very unpleasant.
yeah.
The real stuff is not like.
But it was a good experience for those, nobody was hospitalized or injured, but, so we're really we're dialing a QR code. There's a shared calendar for the space, and the QR code is going to link to who used it, what did you do? And then if you did this, here's the mitigating strategy. If you did this, here's the mitigating strategy. And so, it's multi-tiered firefighter. The reason we're really pushing regional training this year is it's for firefighter safety and public safety if we're doing stuff more like each other. Secondly, if we band together all the training officers for fire training, for example, from all the region, we can shoot a truck down there and meet a Verde Valley truck and do a fire evolution and not have to put on a big event to make it happen and keep our standards up. So, and then it's fully been supported right now. MCS or minimum company standards evaluations are going on this week. The battalion chiefs are running their crews through different drills. And then we've got the ladder truck training March 24th and 25th. And that is folks that have an engineer's task book open and they want to they have to get their ladder certification to keep working towards being a move-up engineer. And I'm looking forward to the next engineers test next year, but I'm not, because it's going to be a large chunk of our employee group that's tested for engineers. So it's going to be that test is going to be a haul. It's going to be awesome. I'm absolutely looking forward to it. It's just coming off the captain's test. I'm like, all right, let's get a breather.
We're getting mixed messages here.
Yeah, it's absolutely amazing. Nothing's better than seeing folks work hard and get an opportunity to promote. It's just, I have scars from the captain's test. It's a heavy lift because you want it. Planning it is nowhere near having to prepare for it, but you put so much into planning it because you want it to be value. Yeah. Oh, that's still not. And then we've got ROVA coming up in April. That is the Recreational Off-Highway Vehicle Association certification that we maintain, and it keeps us current with the Forest Service mandate. And it's good practice for us because we've got folks that are regularly driving our UTVs, and it makes sure they're up on the latest, greatest safety measures and things for our UTVs. And then Proby firefighters coming on in. We've got the 4 we hired coming up for their 6 month, and then the 4 we hired coming up for their start date. So it's moving and grooving. And in the wellness stuff, we're just maintaining our equipment. Annual physicals are ongoing, going well, and he's working on some injury tracking, and we've seen some stuff come up, and then that's good news. It seems that we're trending downward with some of those injuries as it relates to work comp. And then we've been, meaning just staff, Matt Spinelli and some firefighters and different folks at Kirk Rydell have been hitting up some different career fairs around the community, trying to get interest in our organization, and not just from a fire standpoint, but from letting people know, hey, we're not just firefighters. We've got IT, we've got GIS, we've got dispatch, we've got all this opportunity in public safety. And so trying to get that message spread. Next slide. All right. So here's our incident numbers. As always, we are predominantly an EMS agency, a medical services agency, and calls are trending. And excuse me. And like I said, the biggest thing is complexity. EMS calls are up a little bit for this year. Next slide. And then here's our response times. The dispatch time is coming down, which makes me happy. Our ambulance in service time, or transport times are staying steady, and that's relevant to a degree. And in our response times, within a few percentage point or a few points of year over year. So we're maintaining, so we're doing good. Everything with that is going well. I also wanted to touch on, kind of ties back to our annual physicals, and our, we went to the PFFA Healthcare Trust last year as our insurance carrier, and that coupled with a AFTA grant, or a grant through Securus that was sponsored by AFMA. I'm sorry. We're able to put our folks through the Vincere cancer screening, and I just got some numbers back from around the state. So round 1 was latter part of last year. 20 fire districts participated with 480 firefighters, and they identified early stage over 20 folks with cancer. And this round 2 we participated in with 22 fire districts, 469 firefighters to date, and they've already identified early stage 8 cancers in folks. And so we didn't collect the other data, but they've also found a local firefighter in this region. They found a dissecting aortic aneurysm prior to it blowing, and got him to the hospital and on the mend. And he had no idea. And he was at the point of rupture. And
Just do it through imaging?
yep. And numerous other little things, but it's all, there's no trending. We had a couple renal cell carcinomas, lymphoma, thyroid cancer, prostate cancer, 14 basal cell carcinomas, squamous cell carcinoma, head and neck cancer, another couple of thyroid cancers, Ewing sarcoma, 2 testicular cancers, and a basal cell carcinoma is the second round. So it's working, and well, the intent is to keep our people healthy. The unintended benefit is you catch a cancer before it hits stage 1. The cost is much different than a stage 3 cancer. And while that is the goal of the work comp sponsoring these cancer surveys, it wasn't the impetus for it. That was to keep our people healthy. So in the long run, just another avenue we're utilizing to work towards reducing costs and improving the health of our employees. And so with our new with our new insurance, it's opened up to non-operational folks and our spouses as well. So it's a pretty good deal. Other than that, from my office, it's been budget heavy and community engagement heavy the past month, and with great benefit. Some of the meetings I walk in knowing it has nothing to do with the fire district, but they have a desire to be heard by someone, and it always ends up redirecting to Firewise or something relevant. And for you 3 that were at the Sedona Women's meeting, the reason I bring up the ambulance billing piece is that comes up at all the other meetings. So I figured I'd just touch on it there because it's a good deal. And so what I brought up, Lance, because you weren't there, is we don't balance bill for our EMS. We bill your insurance company, and if you're a resident, we don't come after the extra. And that's not the norm, but it's a big deal for our taxpayers. And so I wanted to share that with folks. But
You got a nice response on that one.
Yeah.
Did you hear the?
they were very
from the
happy.
crowd? Yes.
And the thing that's really good is there are a group of folks in this community that I have learned that are at everything. They go to everything I've been at, they've been there. And so we're developing a relationship, and it's fun because it doesn't surprise me anymore, but so many people, we're just a 3-number phone call away from sending a truck to come help you with whatever you want. And our community really doesn't fully understand the totality of the service we provide. And so this has been a great opportunity to really get out there. And I can't tell you how many times people said, I had no idea you did X. And so it's been good. And we're going to continue to do that. I've got the Lions Club Thursday evening, and they're an interesting group. They'll be fun. And so we're just going to keep plugging away, getting that message out. The PSA went out. I apologize for the delay for April 2nd. The city was generating the public service announcement, and we were waiting on one of the private entities that's presenting to vet the language we were using on the document, because they have a lot of lenses on this agency, has a lot of lenses on them right now from the public, and they're being very cautious with their words. So we wanted to be diligent about making sure what we put on the PSA reflected their message. And there was a delay in getting that feedback.
So it's out now?
It is out.
Because it's not known.
I emailed it to the board. We distributed it to our community contacts. It's on our Facebook. I'm going to try to get it in the Red Rock News on Friday.
Great.
And then the city's going to distribute it through their channels. So we'll get it out there. We'll post it and do all sorts of
They
things.
should use their next one.
Yeah, the Nexel or the Event Bridge or the,
Yeah.
Because I always get weird things on there anyway, as soon as we get something like that.
yeah. But that's
Good
really
idea.
the bulk of what we've been working on, is trying to figure that out. Any
Chief,
questions?
before you complete, on the dispatch response time, seeing that improvement was very good. What would you attribute that to?
I dislike that number
Okay.
because there's so many variables that, so the dispatch call taking time could be a bulk of our calls fell in between 10 and 2 in the afternoon, and that was slower for the other agencies. It could be, there's so many variables that could impact those times, but seeing it trend downward is a benefit. And I think being fully staffed is helpful to them and a lot of those things. But, and in travel time's another one that it's interesting because it just depends on where the calls are, We get 5 calls out, 525, that skews it. So,
If year over year that changes though, then it
Yeah,
suggests
Yeah,
that,
exactly.
you know,
If-
like the
if you
travel
see it-
corridors are just too congested or.
Like now.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
that,
today, right?
that is something that we will keep an eye on, as I mentioned earlier, with the large scale development in Uptown and then the potential for what's gonna happen this side of town with the city's annexation. We'll definitely have to evaluate that year over year to see what's happening.
Well, Chief, thank you for that.
Yes,
And I think there's a few more pieces of business that you have in front of us.
yes. So you want to move on to, I just lost my page. You move on to item E,
Item E, yes.
discussion possible approval of board action communication for SharePoint software. Josh, would you like to?
Here. So I'm gonna give you guys a very brief overview of what's going on. I won't bore you too much because I know we've been here for a while. So currently, we have a resource that we are using called SharePoint. It is an on-site resource that runs on the server, basically on our network here. And its main functionality was, well, it was supposed to be kind of like a file storage repository, as well as like a place to get news to our internal members of Sedona Fire. That software was put in place in 2013 and basically hasn't been touched since. It is used mostly now for basically it's like a listing of a bunch of different links somebody clicks on, and then it takes you to a different website, which people use to like access websites easily. It's used a lot for that purpose, but there's a lot of functionality that we weren't taking advantage of. The problem that we're running into now is that, well, when we want to now that we want to go update it, the software's from 2013, it's no longer supported. And so the solution here really is to move our old SharePoint site to new SharePoint. New SharePoint being the cloud-based service that Microsoft supports online now. I've been kind of angling us in the IT department for a long time now, getting us more into the cloud realm, just because not only is it easier to manage, but a lot of it talks to each other. So on this new SharePoint, it's going to solve a couple problems that I've identified pretty much since I've worked here that we need to resolve. One of which is a single base that people can go to access Sedona Fire information internally. What that means is if somebody goes, hey, I don't know the link to get to Lexipol, you can say, go to SharePoint, it's on the main website page, then they can click on that and go to the site. If somebody says, hey, where do I access the files for this kind of training module? The answer would be, go to SharePoint, go to the training side, that's where all the stuff is listed, right? Another thing that this resolves is right now we're identifying problems with calendaring. So if training schedules calendar like a time, date, and event for a specific time, a lot of people don't know where to look to find this information because it's kind of out in the ether. It's not a very easy, accessible place to go. And conversely, sometimes people need to compare their calendars, like, well, training has this thing listed for this day, but I know HR also has a thing happening on this day. I can't, they can't, there's no place for them to go and look and figure out comparison apple to oranges, like what is scheduled at what times, and then where can we schedule stuff. SharePoint helps with that. So we would have a couple different tabs inside SharePoint broken down by department, and each department would have its own calendar, which then goes to a main site and basically lists all this stuff out. All of this very long-winded stuff to say. Basically, we're in a position now where we can implement a cloud solution that will basically solve all these problems. The problem that I'm facing is that we are understaffed to be able to manage something like this. There are basically development firms that are built to just manage SharePoint. There's whole degrees around SharePoint. It's a very complex system. I sat down last August and I kind of built out a homepage and realized pretty early on, I was like, I'm going to be years into this before we even get anywhere where we can deploy this. So I spent the last 4 or 5 weeks now sitting down with 3 different development agencies that kind of, this is their thing that they do. They sit down, you give them the problem that you have going on, and then they develop and build this site for you and walk with you along the way. And the one that I've kind of narrowed down on that is a part of this request is not only will they kind of sit down and listen to everything we have that we need, and then they'll build it out for us and tweak it how we want it. We'll sit down with each department, get it built the way that they want it for each department. But they'll also train, which is a big one because a lot of them didn't provide this. So after, SharePoint is all built out and we have it the way we want it. I know a lot of this cloud stuff I can already tell is nebulous. So they'll sit down with, we'll have, set training sessions to sit down with all the different shifts. You guys are welcome to attend and basically talk about how do we use this new SharePoint? How are we best utilizing the new SharePoint? And what does this, solve and accomplish down with all of the actual, people who will be using it day to day. So that's what this is. We're basically updating our current internal system so that we have a storage space for all of this documentation that we no longer, have a place, or that we currently don't have a place for. Does that make sense? Is there any questions?
So, and this is the motion, $60,000 to do that.
Yep, this is the development price to build out the SharePoint site and all of its pages, as well as what we call the master calendar, that calendar that we'll be able to filter and set up on Outlook, on Teams, and then on SharePoint itself.
And since it's not his job to do this part, I will articulate the why a little bit more. So we currently have some software licenses, policy storage and things of that nature that are $20,000 to $25,000. We currently have a SharePoint 2013 was when we put it in, that is server based, and so there's cost to servers to the tune of $30,000 for a server, so which are coming to end of life, and then extrapolated out over the years. And then now that we're truthfully out of COVID for real, the want and need to use our spaces both from the public and internally for trainings and meetings and things of that nature, we're constantly stepping over each other because there's the facilities usage calendar and the training calendar and the human resource calendar, and they're all tabbed out and there's no way to synchronize them. And so this cost will reduce next year and year over year future costs for us to manage our policies, procedures, and then just have that one-stop shop to the internal guide for the organization. And that was Josh did a phenomenal job vetting these different vendors, and he was explaining some of the less expensive vendors, but also with the caveat that they won't do all the stuff we need it to do. And we landed on this one because it is the totality, it is the entire package that we need to bring us into this decade and have a one-stop shop. And here's a beautiful example of our current.
Yeah, so I thought it maybe help to give you guys a picture of what we're looking at here. So this is our current 2013 SharePoint. If we go and look at all this stuff, so the links I was talking about on the side here, this is majority of what people use. Basically, they'll click on this and it'll take them to a different page. But what SharePoint originally was meant to do is have different breakouts for, you see how there's a training and operation and admin and finance, basically little repositories that these departments can go to, and then they can put their documents. Something else that I haven't mentioned or Missoula hasn't mentioned yet is that currently with our file storage, we store with on-premise servers, which basically means the file is stored right here. Problem with that is if everything goes up in flames, we have backups. We want backups of those backups. This provides us that. Eventually, we will have to replace those servers. And Missoula's was saying, $30,000, but with those servers, we're looking at more like 90 to 120,000. Whereas with this, we're basically already paying for the license because they come with our Office 365. We just have to build out the setup. So this is what the old version looks like. And this is kind of the new, this is very template. This is the one I built out a couple months ago, but this is basically what the new one would sort of look like after we're done with it with the developers. We'd have a main page here. We'd have basically meetings listing of what's going on with each division. So it's going to look a lot more clean when we get the developers in here. That's basically what this would look like. And then we'd have lists here on the top of each division, and then also what their storage for that division is. So HR or training, for example, would have a a tab up here that you can go to that would have fillable forms for if somebody has a class request. Or, you know, if somebody's like, well, we did a training a couple weeks ago, I don't know where to find the documentation for that training. Do we have a video or something? Our YouTube page would be right here in the front, and then training would have the documentation that they need to go there. Right now, all this is kind of nebulous. There's no real way to go figure out where one thing is because we're kind of everywhere.
I would add, it's worse than nebulous. Because the thing is, when there's versions of, like during testing, when there's different versions of a document, like a policy that's available, and we haven't versioned them correctly, where the most current one is forward, then people are looking at two different resources that have different sources of information. So I would say that shared situational awareness, aligning and deconflicting the schedules, and creating more a clear path for the user to go source the information themselves and not have to make Josh or Kiona or somebody else be the one that has to go find them and give them that stuff. It's there is an efficiency and a thoroughness, and I'm glad, Josh, you did not decide to do this yourself, because there are certain things where you lean into expertise to get you to a point where maintaining it is less complex.
And
I think this is one of them.
And frankly, our old SharePoint is versioned for my generation, in the sense that, you know, it was very clunky. Microsoft Office was the latest thing. And
It's AOL.
yeah, huh?
It's like AOL.
Yeah, it's AOL. And
It's like dial-up AOL.
And with, you know, reviewing the totality of our recruitment, retention, and employee development, it's my opinion that we have to have these department resources that look like the 1,000 apps everybody has on their phone, and the functionality of it.
So I have a question.
Yes.
Since I joined the board, I have been hearing negative things on SharePoint. So obviously this sounds like it's a solution. My question though is, if we've had all these problems with SharePoint, why are we staying with the same platform?
That's what we're calling it.
Yeah, you know, we should have said yes, not yeah. Yes, we've said it. Yes, I have said that. That is a failure on my part. What I should have said is the free version, the outdated free version of SharePoint that we rely upon isn't adequate for our needs. Because it's not that SharePoint, I mean, SharePoint it's just a records management system. It can be a lot of things. We have not leveraged its capabilities, and so it's led to frustration that we've just labeled a SharePoint problem, when really it's a process and a systems problem.
Well,
That would be my view of it, at least.
yeah, I don't like overstep, but what happened with original SharePoint was it was not built to basically reach its potential. It was built by a IT person very much in my position who tried to build it themselves, but did not have the depth of knowledge that you need to make SharePoint work as a product. What happened was it was very built out. It was built out very quickly, and then basically never touched again. What this kind of resolves is that we get a whole company that backs us, that builds it out the way it's supposed to be built, the way we want it to be built. And then if we ever have any questions, we need to alter it anyway, we just basically purchase another block of hours where they can go and fix that stuff later. But then a lot of, you know, the little things can fall back on people like me or the new IT position to kind of solve the little stuff.
So you're confident in the basic underlying platform? That's really my question.
There's a whole industry for this. We're not the only company who's ever used SharePoint the way we're about to use it. That's why like places like this development firm exist, is that's all they do, is they build SharePoint sites out for companies much bigger than us.
I guess and let me try one more time on my question.
Yeah.
Because did we look at any other options for the underlying platform besides SharePoint?
We're using some right now currently. So like things like Lexipol, things like Fire Rescue One, things like those, where everything is kind of all over the place. And we found that those things don't have the kind of feature set that we need to solve the issues we have. I'll use like the calendaring as an example. People, and this is totally rightfully them, they want one pane of glass. They want to look at one thing and know, hey, everything I need is right here. And we're not really getting that right now. with, things like Lexipol where they have to have a separate login, they go in there and then they check that, but that's only for the training side. If I want to go look and see what, for example, CRR is doing, I have to go into Outlook then, go to the Outlook webpage, check that documentation, figure out where that's at. And then the two don't talk to each other. What SharePoint kind of solves for that is it's built within the Microsoft ecosystem. So we'll be able to make it so that not only does SharePoint pull information from each of those individual tabs, but it also projects it onto like Teams or in Outlook on your calendar in Outlook. So you have multiple places to look at the same resource.
Okay.
So it solves that kind of issue. Does that answer your question?
Thank you, Josh. I just, having heard so much about,
Negativity about,
yeah,
well, and I think that was the fault of myself included, those who deliver the message to the board, is that I didn't fully seek to understand from our IT division. Like, I just labeled SharePoint as the big bad wolf, and it wasn't that. It was the version we adopted and the features that we didn't pay for, we got for free, and just really, we haven't kept up with technology, and we haven't kept up with what's available. I mean, with the introduction of Microsoft 365, just the fully integrative strategies we're trying to adopt, and in concert with, Captain Kurt's working on our policy updates, and then it'll just migrate to this, and then we'll have a one-stop shop is the ultimate goal.
yes, Diana.
I would like to make a motion. I move to approve the purchase order in the amount of $60,000 to WCI, AKA Hinge Point, for SharePoint migration project.
Do we have a second?
I will second that.
Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? You have, your motion has passed.
Thank you, Josh. Thank you, board.
I just, to end cap this, I think it's a little bit of money for a lot of values. Hopefully it will be a
Yeah,
lot of
so-
value.
Another thing to mention.
It's
is
just not that much
when
money.
SharePoint 2013, you had to, when 2016 version came out, because they were on premise, you had to then pay the license for that as well. Or when 2018 came out, you then had to pay the license for that as well. With this, it's a blanket cost. What'll happen is anytime SharePoint ever gets an upgrade, it's already on Office 365. There is no cost to do a new server. There's no cost to move all of our stuff over to a new server like we're having to deal with now. So it really is, you get more bang for your buck this way.
Great. Wonderful.
Okay, replacing turnout gear.
All right, so this is a budgeted capital item that ensures our firefighters have up-to-date turnouts, and it's a continued work towards a second set of turnouts to meet the cancer mitigation strategies we have put in place. Are there any questions?
I have one.
Yes.
And, I should have asked this years ago, but, we follow and we have to follow that 10-year because it's the recommended replacement
Manufacturer,
time. Yes, but I wonder how that 10 years is based. Is it based on number of uses?
No.
No, it's
It's-
just based on time. And does the material degrade, or is it just assumed?
It's exactly that.
Okay.
Donning and doffing, being bunched up in a bag, being stuffed in a compartment, just all those fibers. There's 3 layers, and all the layers, as they flex and bend, there's degradation. And we do an annual inspection where I can't even begin to explain. They do a pressure test and some other things. And that's what they find. And then hopefully we'll get towards a point soon where we get rid of some of the PFAS in our turnouts, because our turnouts are producing as much carcinogens as the stuff that's burning. So it's a great problem to have.
Diana?
I'd like to make a motion. I move to approve the purchase of the turnout gear for operational staff in the amount of $63,203.75 from the Swift Group LLC.
Is there any further discussion?
It's not so much a discussion, but just in case any member of the public is listening to us, I do think it's really helpful for the public to know that we need to do this, and we need to do this every 10 years. It's a very large and expensive item. So just to know it's mandated, and it's for the protection of our firefighters.
And
in
it's
terms of cancer.
and it's a cost we continue to manage. They've gone up $500 a set over the past year.
Okay, any other discussion?
We need a second.
A second.
Yes,
I will. second.
you'll second, okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Passed, we will buy new turnout gear. All right,
All right.
laryngoscopes.
Nope, we gotta do RFQ.
We're doing our what?
Request for
I
quote.
think I put all the backs together and that was the last.
Oh, okay, that's last one. Okay,
Who's
so
last?
laryngoscopes. So we've got intubation assist devices that it's a camera that you insert into the oral pharynx and it assists us in intubating our patients. They're reaching end of life. They're a bit over 10 years old, and there's, like everything, some new, greater, better technologies. We have some money capitalized for a cardiac monitor, but are foregoing that purchase and would like to utilize those budgeted dollars in addition to a $10,000 donation from a resident for the purchase of GlideScope Go video laryngoscopes for our ambulances and engines. And the $10,000 donation was secondary to us having a successful resuscitation of a cardiac arrest, and the family donated. And we would like to, it was unspecified, we would like to use that donation for an expense that improves our medical services. And so that's the request.
So any questions or discussion?
On this one, Chief, it's been fascinating for me to learn that our medics can do apply a laryngoscope and that they're certified to give the medicines that are somewhat, you have to carefully give those medicines because too much can have a person not breathe, that they're certified to be able to do these steps, and that it's not every district that has certified.
All paramedics are certified to do intubation. What Corey is referencing is we're one of the few organizations in the state that is certified to do rapid sequence intubation. And to oversimplify it, we give 2 of the 3 medicines they give for lethal injection to our patients so that we can facilitate an intubation on a trauma patient. In fact, they had one Sunday that they did successfully. And the camera, it's
essential if you're going to do that.
yeah, and
If
with a difficult airway, it's eyesight and a LED bulb and hopes and wishes. But with the camera, it's been a game changer. And I'll back up a little bit. Evaluated a lot of the stuff on the market, and we had our recent airway lab, and we were able to demo a bunch of different products. And this is the one our physician really likes as well. And it's similar. It is the units that the aircraft use. So it's that piece of familiarity as well, where, it's same equipment.
There's an added responsibility when you're the one that paralyzes the patient to make sure that you can not only manage a normal airway, but also manage a very difficult airway.
Yep. Any other questions? Okay, I will make a motion to approve the purchase of GlideScope Go video laryngoscopes for our paramedic ambulances and engines in the amount not to exceed $53,000. Do I have a seconder?
I'll second.
Okay, any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? We will purchase laryngoscopes.
All right.
Awesome.
Okay, last one, and I am a quick learner, Miss Diana. I'll essentially worked with Bill Whittington and his team and his firm, should call it a team, to develop RFQs for one, an architect, and 2, the CMAR, construction manager at risk. The reason you do it in two waves is you identify an architect, and then you get some essential, as-built designs to get some costs, and then you marry them with the CMAR, the construction manager, and then they work through, hey, we should use this block instead of this, or hey, we did this down in Phoenix, it was cheaper than doing it this way. And your architect fine tunes the drawings with the assistance of the contractor, so that the intent is to reduce costs. Mm-hmm. The other part of a CMAR that's beneficial is they will provide for us a maximum price. And then there's some opportunities with a CMAR for us to program in. If you're not done by this date, it costs this much a day. And so the CMAR process, vetting it through different fire chiefs and the construction companies throughout the state recommend that is the identified process for us. Some other options are design build, where we sit down and think we're brilliant and design this beautiful station and then hope a contractor can figure out how to build it. And those generally have cost overruns, so on and so forth. Reason this is on the agenda, one, for you to approve the contracts. Two, it was brought to my attention there was a couple things that would like to be modified. And the two things are, in the architect RFQ, it specifically states no contact with staff or board, and not in the CMAR RFQ. So that's a recommended change so that they're like. The second one is the architect RFQ. I can't talk anymore. The architect RFQ has a conflict of interest identified as a disqualification, but not the CMAR. So the asks are that those two modifications be made, and in the interest of time and so the way this process works now, we're in escrow for the property, and we can initiate the RFQ process. To do that, we have to, it's 6 days apart, advertise in the local paper that we have an RFQ. And so there's a week plus of time. And then you have a period of time it's open for submissions, and then you have a review period, and then a selection period, and then it goes to the board. And best case scenario, I'd like to align our process so that we can take to the board for approval, architect and a contractor, June, probably July meeting. And with that, each of these RFQs has a scoring matrix. And unless otherwise directed, my intent would be to have a couple folks from our station build committee, myself, another chief officer, a board member, and our project manager in to do the evaluation of the architect and the construction group. So that's really what this was about, the intent would be, unless there are other changes recommended, would be to recommend approval of the RFQs as presented with the recommended changes is what I'm asking for.
So are there other, Corey?
I don't know if it's a necessary change, but just something that caught my eye on the scope of work for the architect. It has 3 apparatus bays, and then 1 pull-through base for the command vehicle. I'm just wondering, I noticed on the contractors, it says 3 pull-through apparatus bays. It doesn't use the word pull-through here. Does that matter?
It doesn't.
It's just assumed that it's going to be pull-through?
Yeah, and they will be, and that'll be discussion with the architect. They'll, generally speaking, once selected, they'll come up. Of course, they want to come up to Sedona, so they'll come up, and then my intent would be with a group of folks to do a walk and talk of the current property, and then look at some architecture in Uptown to give them a starting point with their design. But truthfully, I've spent dozens of hours poring over every contractor site I can find that builds fire stations, and there's a standard. It's like a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house. There's a standard for fire stations, and we're really not going to spend a lot of time on design because there's 3 or 4 that we'll land on with the property size and everything else.
So you don't feel a need to put the pull-through word in
I
here?
don't, because one of the recommended NFP standards is non-backing bays, so it'll just.
Very good.
And
It's a good catch though.
yeah, it is a great catch, and at least I didn't find a single station that has been built in Arizona in the past 10 years that doesn't have pull-through bays.
Okay.
So
Very good. And the only other thing I noticed that in asking for information from the person's, the company, the contractors, it was where you ask for their start date and finish date on various projects they've had. That's one of the things they're supposed to submit. I just wonder how useful that is. Wouldn't it be start date, completion date, and what was the original completion date? And then when did it actually complete?
and do you have an opinion on that?
It's not bad information to get. Yeah, makes some sense. I don't think, this one doesn't provide any specific points to apply to that kind of question. So I'm not sure where we'd put it in here, but I think there's nothing wrong with asking it.
Yeah, and to be clear, I'm not, my intent is to get this right in your eyes because these templates, we've got multiple projects that will require architect and CMAR in the next couple of years. So I would really like to take enough time to land on a product that I can just cut and paste the different project on, and we have the language, so we're not reinventing it every time.
You could add that right into your motion if you'd like, and we just get it into the.
Cost and time overruns versus cost and time projected.
Very good.
So the question, my comment that I would make on this is if you, in reading the two documents, the processes for them are different. I mean, they do read like they're coming from two different agencies. And Chief, I will leave it to your discretion, but in light of what you're saying about the number of RFQs
Yeah.
that we have coming out, it seems that we should have an approach. And if it's opening all the documents publicly at 2:00 on then we do that, and we do it on all of the RFQs. Otherwise.
No, and I appreciate that. And that's the other piece of it. I left a lot of the dates absent in these documents because I wanted to have the discussion with you about timeline tonight before I anchored into it. So, yeah, and as it's been explained to me, the fundamental need for a more comprehensive RFQ for the CMAR is there versus the architect. And so that's why it's 22 versus 9 pages. And so I'm looking for direction. I don't have I just, like I said, from a efficiency standpoint, I want to anchor into documents that I can change it from station 4 to station 5 and everything else is read the same. And so.
Is there a time factor in this? Do we need this today?
We don't need this today, but to align with the June, July timeframe,
Yeah.
getting edits out today would be good. But I mean, like, right is better than fast, you know, and these, as Mr. Whittington has stated, these were vetted and useful RFQs for other agencies, and so did a lot of wordsmithing with them. But if there's specific edits we need to make and take a little bit more time, that's what we need to do.
Well, I was only talking for consistency.
Yeah.
And if, and I do hear the time constraint, and I think that's important. So I will step back on the need to bring them together. But I just think consistency is usually a pretty good approach.
Understood.
So perhaps we can do the motion now and.
Yeah, we do with
And
you.
ask that they be looked at for anything that happens. in
And that was the
future.
intent. So to motion to approve the RFQs as presented with the recommended discussed edits, and how do we write to like size them? How would you appropriately state
With the
that?
recommendation that staff and council get together to see if they can bring them into a compatible format for future use.
Okay. And my question to you, Mr. Whittington, is can you do that while also honoring the time frame?
Yeah, yeah, and I think, just so you know, what that's likely to result in is the architect's RFQ is going to get a little longer. So it
Great.
Yeah.
better matches CMAR.
Okay.
So I will make that motion.
So
as you
moved.
just stated, so moved, exactly.
I'll second it. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Nays? Nope. You have RFQs with contingencies.
All right. Thank you.
Okay. So the last item on the agenda is, do we have any board member updates? Cory, anything?
Well, I want to say that attending and getting to watch our illustrious chief and give a talk at
stumbled through the
Sedona
talk.
Women, I just was proud of the presentation you did, and especially that you used it as a time to, with a very large crowd who are active in the community, to inform them more about SFD and what we offer and the area we cover, and it was excellent.
Well, I appreciate that very much, because I stutter stepped because I wasn't appropriately informed as to the content of the other lecturers. So I was last almost, and they pretty much covered everything that I was gonna cover.
You didn't say, you guys covered everything, did you?
No, I said,
Yeah, but you did a great job.
I appreciate that. And it's just, it's important to me because, there, if DOS comes to the Sedona Fire District, I want our community to be informed. DOS is a play on Doge. From our guys are brilliant at inventing stuff, and they've come up with DOS. It's the Department of Sedona Efficiency. And so, and it harkens back to the dark days of 2012. And I just,
It all does.
one thing I've learned recently, meeting with these community groups, is our general population recycles itself in Sedona about every 5 years. And there is the core group, but about every 5 years we get a recycle. And it's been well over 5 years since COVID, and we haven't been out messaging our product. And so it's really been enlightening to me that I've had a shift in focus, and I'm seeking more of these groups out, because it's stuff that we get lazy about and think, oh, everybody knows that, but we've got a whole new group of residents now.
It's also that California has.
Yeah.
And it's just creating a huge amount of business for us and a huge amount of opportunity, I think.
Absolutely. And that's how I look at it. It's opportunity, because that's why we're here.
So Diana, do you have any updates?
No.
Okay, Lance.
I will be attending a emergency vehicle upfitter expo next week.
Woo!
And just be, harvesting new and latest tech and bringing it home to myself. And I'm continuing my own recertification package, which will get me current through 2028, 2029. It's 17 ASCs and the 2 master levels.
Where's it at?
I just do it all. You can actually do it all online now.
The whole thing is online? I was gonna say, because our upfitter is,
Oh, sorry. I thought ASCs.
no,
No, it's in Chandler. It's MTI.
okay.
I can't remember the vendor, but there's 2 systems that I want to take back here,
Yeah.
and it's in the weeds. We'll discuss it.
Yeah, my only ask is that if our current vendor for our upfits for our command vehicles, they become very busy. And if you have an opportunity to be like, hey, I found this guy that does it here.
Well, unfortunately, this vendor basically is in the same situation,
Okay.
and we're looking at lead time. I have to back off. That's for another person. Anyway, lead times for smaller agencies can run into 12 plus months.
Yeah.
So the only thing that I would like to add, I'd like to echo what Corey said about the presentation that you did at Sedona Women, because I think of all of the presenters, you were the most approachable and the most informative on a local level. So thank you for that.
Thank you. I like the Coconino guy. He was good old.
Yeah, he was great. He was lovely, but the other thing I want to do is remind the board members of a few dates. March 31st is the potluck for our new firefighters. That's Monday, the 31st. So Kim is coordinating all that. So just a reminder about that.
Is it too late to RSVP? So you can put me down and I'll bring something.
That's great.
Okay. Thank
Okay.
you.
Just to let you know, I sent this out. The April 8th, the city of Sedona will be declaring the week of May 5th to be Keep Your Pets Fire Safe Week. And the chief and I will be there for the proclamation ceremony on the 8th. You're certainly welcome to join us. It's 4:30 at City Hall.
4:30 tonight.
Yeah, 4:30.
It's a council meeting.
Yes. And on April 2nd, just a reminder that is the fire awareness prevention, the town hall. I never know what to call it.
Town hall.
Town hall, and up at the Performing Arts Center. And I think that sort of does it. So with that, unless there's anything else, this meeting is adjourned.
All right.